Good morning and welcome. My name is Jonathan, and I'll be your MC today. I'm pleased to welcome those here in our community center and those joining on Facebook Live and YouTube to Kansas City Oasis. Since 2014, Oasis has been the premier secular alternative to faith-based communities. We welcome all, regardless of belief or non-belief, race, gender, sexual orientation, identity, or any other trait. We feel the human experience is better when shared, and we're pleased that you all have chosen to share it with us this morning. And I see a lot of new faces today. I'm glad that you made it, and I hope to see you in the future. Here at Oasis, we gather around 5 core values, which are people are more important than beliefs, reality is known through reason, human hands solve human problems, meaning comes from making a difference, and be accepting and be accepted. For today's program, our feature speaker is going to be Gary Jenkins, speaking on the Underground Railroad, and our musical guest will be Izzy Heller. Izzy is a Kansas City-based singer-songwriter. She grew up singing and playing guitar and started writing her own music in college. She has since released an EP and a few singles on various streaming platforms. Her songs explore themes of both loss and growth and the difficulties of navigating life in such a confusing world. Let's give a warm Oasis welcome to Izzy Heller.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. This is such a cool space. I'm so happy to be here. And this first song that I'm going to play for you guys is I actually recently released it. Well, maybe not so recently, but the most recently. It's called Not That Far, and it's available on all streaming platforms. And it's essentially about missing someone that you feel like no matter how much time passes, like they're just always there in the back of your head. And you feel like you can never get over it. So stinging of tears here in the darkness, spilling over hearts that I don't know. A mind full of rage, so many words to say, no one to hear. Well, I don't want to write another sad song. I'd really rather sing a happy tune. I wish I were the type to let it float on by, but then I see you. Oh, you text me in the middle of the night, say you didn't mean to open up that line. Haven't heard from you in months, but here you are. Come back to remind me you're just not that far. Waking in the morning with the feeling that somehow I'm wearing someone else's skin. These hands cannot be mine. If they were, they'd be intertwined with yours. Wishing I could float out of my body so I could steal a single glance at you. I wonder if it's true that you still read the notes I wrote for you. You text me in the middle of the night, say you didn't mean to open up that line. Haven't heard from you in months, but here you are. Come back to remind me you're just not that far. That far. That far. Ooh. Sometimes you text me in the middle of the night, say you didn't mean to open up this time. Haven't heard from you in months, but here you are, and I know you'll never really be too far. Oh, thank you. It's been a minute since I performed, actually. So getting up here, I'm like, But yeah, and also I want to apologize if I'm depressing everyone so early in the morning. But every time I start writing a song, I feel like it just comes out kind of sad. So, the next song I'm gonna play for you is called "Precious Thoughts," and this is just basically about having thoughts of like wanting things that aren't good for you, which I tend to do a lot. Closing my eyes while I drive to give death a challenge. Take me or leave me, what'll it be? Well, how long can I keep them closed before the panic sets in? What if it happens? Well, I wanna leave. So I will take my precious thoughts and place them in a jar to rot. Watch them decompose and float away back to the ground from whence they came, never to return again. Take them far away from my body tonight, tonight. Holding my hands way too close to the heat, feel the warmth as it starts crawling up my body. I should stop, I should leave. It's not easy for me. Force my hands back into the pocket of my jeans. I long for the pain like a moth to a flame. Cannot quite comprehend the agony of that end. It's a slow burn, I know, sneaks up on your soul. Try to conjure the strength to take back the control. So I will take my precious thoughts and place them in a jar to rot. Watch them decompose and float away back to the ground from whence they came, never to return again. Take them far away from my body tonight, 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 tonight. Shut them all out, don't let them in. Pick out the excess remains from your skin. Now you can breathe. can breathe. Shut them all out, don't let them in. Pick out the excess remains from your skin and breathe. God, I can breathe. So I will take my precious thoughts and place them in a jar to rot. Watch them decompose and float away back to the ground from whence they came, never to return again. Take them far away from my body tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Izzy. Okay, time for announcements. Birthdays this week. On July 26th, it's Ron Runke's birthday. July 30th is Brad Carpenter. And July 31st is Autumn Winiger. Does anybody else have a birthday or a celebration this week? Yes. Nice. Happy birthday. Okay, we'd like to thank you to all the volunteers who helped us with the concessions at KC Fringe during the past 10 days. Especially those who worked multiple shifts, like Denise Decker, Denise Robison, Terry Allen, Sarah Geelan, Lori Kellogg, and Jennifer Barnes. And thank you to the board members who helped organize and coordinate this event. So today we don't have a community moment, so that we can end a little early, since there's going to be an encore performance by the winner of the Best in Show among the 5 shows that took place here. Ambiguous will have an encore show today at 2:30. You might consider grabbing a quick lunch and then coming back to see the most popular show at this location. Tickets are $15 plus a $5 fringe button if you don't already have one. Tomorrow is our monthly Monday musical. We'll be showing My Fair Lady. Doors open at 5:30. Show starts at 6. Bring your own food and drink. This Saturday, August 1st, come join us at the Americana Music and Arts Festival in the Concourse Park. It's in the historic Northeast District. This event is 3 p.m. until 9:30, and we plan to meet up at 6. There will be a secular grief support group beginning the first Tuesday of each month, starting August 4th. It's a way to find the support you need without prayers, proselytizing, or dogma. They will be meeting downstairs. Ready to dance to the songs you love and hear on the radio? Come join the KC Swingsters this August for line dancing lessons and learn fun, easy to follow dances, set today's hits, and throwback favorites. Every Tuesday in August, 6:30 to 7:30, $15, no partner needed. Do we need boots? No, it's a joke. I'll bring my hat. Okay, and one more thing. On Tuesday, August 4th, join us for a fun-filled evening at Atlas 9, an immersive art experience set in a transformed 90s movie theater where scenes from forgotten films come to life. Tickets are $20 for adults on Tuesdays. Usually they're $40. And there's a 15% discount for kids 12 and under. Make time to vote. Okay. Okay, and then come support our local dance team, the KC Swingsters, um, on August 8th at 6:30. There'll be a dance performance, and 7:30 a community potluck. The floor will be open for social dancing during the potluck. Bring a dish, snack, or drink to share. Again, that's August 8th. Community groups. It's almost that time again. Fall community groups. We are gathering our list of hosts now. Please sign up by August 8th to host a group. Once we have a group host list, we'll open participant sign up on August 15th. Mark your calendar and sign up to reserve your preferred donation spot for our blood drive on August 30th. And help us raise funds to mount our projector from the ceiling and install a screen for better visibility of slides during our meetings. If you'd like to see the slides better, help us out. Scan this code for a dedicated link to donate through Zephy, or if Venmo, mention projector in the comment box. So far, we've raised $1,100 towards this goal. If you're interested in joining our Facebook private group, ask someone with a yellow Oasis name tag. And community moments are an opportunity for a member of our community to present on a topic of their choice during a Sunday gathering. Topics can be related to your profession, hobbies, travel experiences, volunteer experiences, etc. You can sign up on kcoasis.org or speak with Roger Pick. Okay, it's time for our coffee break. Try to introduce yourself to someone you don't know. See the TV over the center doors for more upcoming events and information. We'll see you back in 15 minutes. Welcome back. Hot off the press, we just learned during coffee break that a generous member helped us reach our goal, and our projector project is fully funded. So that is awesome. That will be so good. Okay, let's welcome back Izzy for another song. Hey, Izzy, could you tell us more about your influences to learn and play guitar and write your own songs?
Ooh, my influences. I mean, I've always just loved singing. I remember being really, really little, and my mom would play like No Doubt, Just a Girl for me all the time, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I want to be a pop star. And yeah, I just grew up in a really like music centered household, and my parents were just always really supportive of me trying new things. And I started learning the guitar when I was about 10 on a little Hannah Montana guitar, and it's just been fun since then.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this song is actually really special to me. It's one of like the only songs that this has happened to me where I was just like sitting and the song just kind of like started pouring out of me. I was just feeling really overwhelmed and feeling like I was giving a lot of effort to things and people that weren't really giving it back. And so this song is called Leave. Take every piece of my heart, take my soul, scatter the pieces of me all around, take the control. Leave all the scraps behind, cut out the core, turn me inside out, and then ask for more. I'm still trying to learn how to move on, how to be heard, and I knew you would win, 'cause that's all you do, that's all you knew. Steal every sense of myself, all I've known, then let the doubt simmer through all my veins. What don't you own? Give barely enough to just keep me alive, or rot away as I sit and I wait for nothing to arrive. That's all you do. That's all you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Izzy. Okay. Now it's time for our main speaker. Please note that our program is designed to generate conversation and engage powers of reason, not as a forum to start debates. The following presentation has been prepared by our speaker and not by KC Oasis. Please respect the views of our speaker, and if you have any questions, a Q&A portion will follow as time permits. Gary Jenkins retired from the Kansas City Police Department in 1996 after 25 career, during which he investigated organized crime for 14 years. He attended the University of Missouri Kansas City School of Law. Over the past decade, Gary has produced 5 documentary films and written 5 books. His documentaries and books are on Kansas City history, crime, and the mafia, slavery, and the Underground Railroad. Gary also hosts a true crime podcast titled Gangland Wire Crime Stories. Let's welcome back Gary Jenkins.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you. Well, I got ready to go out the door, and my wife looked me up and down and said, well, you look like you know what you're doing. So at least I got that going for me. Anyhow, I've been here before talking about the mob, and but I also did my first 2 documentaries were about slavery in Missouri and what it was like on Missouri slave farms, not in the Deep South, but slavery. It's called Negroes to Hire. And the second one was Freedom Seekers, Stories from the Western Underground Railroad, and that's what we're here to talk about today. We got the Lane Trail. Now, take a quick look here. Okay, first of all, a lot of us are Missourians, I think, and there is no documented information about any Underground Railroad or any assistance to people escaping from slavery by Missourians. There's one of a guy down in Lexington who moved to Kansas that wrote it down, but other than that, I know him and I talked to Diane Moody Burke from UMKC, and she wrote the kind of definitive book on Missouri slavery called On Slavery's Borders, and she said she knew of none. So if you got this house in your neighborhood that used to be an Underground Railroad stop and you're in Liberty or here in Kansas City, probably not. There's a lot of myths about the Underground Railroad. At the time, Missouri was like a thumb sticking up there, surrounded by the Kansas Territory, which will become free, Iowa, which is a free state, and Illinois is a free state. So, one of the first places. Well, wait a minute, I should go back, but okay. In the effort to make Kansas a free state, there's a man named Jim Lane brought a lot of Easterners out to Kansas, and they couldn't come up the Missouri River because the Missouri border ruffians would not allow them to pass through Missouri. So they went up to Chicago and then across through Iowa and then down through Kansas to get to Topeka and Lawrence in order to vote when they had the vote, and ended up Kansas became a free state. And he created what they called the Lane Trail because he blazed that trail through those unmarked prairies through Iowa and Nebraska and northern Kansas. Used to call them, he built stone cairns about that high, and they called them Lane's Chimneys. And so that became the Underground Railroad out. One of the first places was Quindaro, established by abolitionists, a little town just north of here. They still have a lot of great ruins, but it's really hard to get down in there and forget about it in the summertime when it's hot. They do have a gazebo up there at the top and some markings, and there's really cool ruins. I don't know if you're supposed to go down there or not. I think you're not supposed to. I've done it, and they're really cool, pristine, archaeological pristine ruins down in there. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to see any houses. There's a part of an old stone cabin, but it's really cool down there. Kansas becomes a free state, and the Fugitive Slave Act is passed back in D.C. It's a national federal law that says any escaping person, escaping from slavery or freedom seeker, can be brought back to the South, brought back into slavery. And it orders that people should help someone who's trying to capture an escaping slave and bring them back into slavery, a freedom seeker. So that sets up the Underground Railroad because people were coming out of Kansas, out of Missouri, mainly into Kansas, because they knew from listening to their slave master talk and other people in the community, they knew that over there in Kansas, just across the state line, just across this imaginary line, it was free, and people would support you, and they started coming over into Kansas. But after this Fugitive Slave Act is passed, then Missourians are hatting up and having these posses, the vigilante committees, the Platte County militia, and they're patrolling along the borders. They're the slave patrollers at night. They're patrolling. They're looking for any runaways, and they're going over into Kansas then and trying to find people. And if you think about it, at the time, if you were black, you were a slave. If you're a slave, you were black. That was what, it was easy to find somebody. This is the Underground Railroad across the entire United States. If you notice, it all starts with border states. There's no routes way deep down in the South. It's just too hard. There's nobody going to help you. It's just too hard. There's a few instances where people got out, but there's no organized group of people down south of the border states. But we have Kansas over here. Go up through Iowa and cross the Lane Trail to Chicago and around the Great Lakes to Detroit, and you can get over to Canada pretty easy over there if you had to. A lot of people just stayed in Chicago because there's a pretty large group of free black population, so you could just blend in. Now, we mentioned Quindaro, but Lawrence was a real abolitionist center. It was a real liberal center, as it is today, compared to the conservative South, and it runs through today. They bring a U.S. Marshal, Mr. Arms, over, and he puts out an announcement that he's there for the purpose of Negro hunting and watching your houses. And so in Lawrence, it's starting to get hot. There's a lot of people who have come in, and they've gotten jobs, established. One guy became a barber. A freedom seeker became a barber, and so they're establishing themselves in that community. They're working for farmers around there, and now these Missourians are coming over and looking and searching, so they have to hide. And it's a little bit, and we don't want to get too political here, but it's a little bit like ICE today, going in and grabbing up people off the street and loading them and taking them off with the approval of the federal government. And they're not really looking to see who, if somebody really is documented or undocumented, because if you're brown, you must be from out of the country and that kind of a thing. So same way back then, if you're black, you must be a slave. It didn't matter whether you had free papers or not. They'd just take them and throw them away because there was money to these guys. They were making money off this deal. So the one story I really want to go into, and I wrote a book about this, is the story of the Immortal 10 and John Doy. John Doy is sitting in the middle. He was so weak when they broke him out of jail in St. Joe that he couldn't stand. Those other 10 men, it makes me want to cry almost, because when men do things dangerous together as a team, I don't know. It makes me want to cry, partly because that's what I used to do. I don't know. But enough of that. I don't know why it does. But it's a great story. So they're coming into Kansas, and they're coming out of Weston and Platte City mainly because it's easy to get across the river. There's a Rialto ferry at the time that came into the south part of side of Weston, still a Rialto landing there. And so they're going across the river and looking around and are trying to snatch people off the streets of Kansas. And there's some citizens that even they grab a guy and starting to take him out of town, and some citizens attack them and pull him away from them, and they have to ride out of town because now the mob's too much for them. For the Missouri border ruffians is what we called them, border ruffians at the time. And so they have a community meeting in Lawrence, and they decide, we have got to get all the people, the freedom seekers that have come over from Missouri, we've got to get them out of here, and we've got to get them on north. We've got to get them on up to Chicago, because out in the prairie, in southern Iowa, you couldn't go west. I mean, what are you going to do? Go out into western Kansas all alone with no money and no horses and nothing? Because people had nothing but the clothes on their back when they came over. And people on the prairie, the early settlers, they didn't have a bunch of cash money to, give somebody a stake to go out and create their own little farm 100 miles or 200 miles on out into Kansas. They didn't have support to do that. So they said, we're gonna take these folks on north. And they had a meeting, and this John Doy and his son, Charles Doy, and another man who all of a sudden I've lost it. I used to know it. All of a sudden I've lost it. He got set loose pretty quick. John Doy and his son said, we'll do it. They took up a collection to get money to pay for any provisions along the way to get them clear up to Chicago or maybe around to Detroit. And he's going to take 14 folks out of Lawrence. So they start out, and they start north. Well, at the same time, there's a man out of Weston named Jacob Hurd who was like he was your quintessential border ruffian. He was big. He was like the bully of Skidmore, if you know that story. He was big. He was vicious. He was mean, but he was charismatic, and he led a group of men up out of Platte County who were always patrolling along the border and trying to find people. And they caught him at Oskaloosa, Kansas, just north of Lawrence. And there's 2 wagons of them. They caught him, held him at gunpoint. They then took over driving Doy's wagons and made them sit in the back, and headed back to the Rialto ferry landing over by Leavenworth. And so they get to Rialto ferry landing, take them over to Weston, get them out, and they parade them up and down the streets. Oh, it's a hoo-ha time for these guys now. They have scored a real score. They've made a real score against these Kansans, these abolitionists, these Kansas pukes, as they used to call them. And it was pretty vicious between along the border at that time. So they're parading them around downtown Weston. They're lucky that they didn't, the white guys that were with them, Doy and his son, they're lucky they didn't go ahead and hang them. So they kind of an interesting story. They put them in the attic of the hotel in Weston. I went up there and tried to see if there is an old hotel, but I couldn't really see anything that was as big as what they were talking about. Put them all in the attic for that night, the rest of that night. Next morning they come down, and slavery and race relations are always complicated. They're always complicated. They bring them downstairs. They take them out to the kitchen because, of course, black folks couldn't eat in the restaurant part of the hotel. It was like that when I was a kid growing up in Plattsburgh. Black folks couldn't eat in the front part of the restaurant. They ate back in the kitchen. So they had them eating in the kitchen. Well, Doy and his son said, we can't eat with these people. We can't eat with black people. We have to eat up front with the white people. That's how complicated it was. But yet he was risking his life and his fortune to help people get free. So go figure. Go figure. People are complicated, right? So they have kind of the enslaved persons are then they start trying to find who their owners are. It's some people will not tell you who their real owner is because it was so bad where they came from, that they'll take their risk on being sold on the courthouse steps. You go back to the Liberty Tribune, there was a lot of sheriff's sales of people on the courthouse steps up in Liberty. There's probably some over here in Westport. They had a slave market in Westport too. They're at about Westport and Broadway at one time. But up in actually, it would have been in Independence because that was a county seat in Jackson County, so it would have been in Independence. I'm sorry. But up in Liberty, they had sheriff's sales. So they would go through a sheriff's sale, and then the sheriff would get to keep a piece of that action, or most of the money, I believe. But some people, they would admit, so-and-so over in, Platte County or Jackson County or whatever, that was my slave master, and then they'll come and get them and take them back and dole out the appropriate punishment. And what was interesting, in the slave narratives, when I was doing that slavery movie, there was one of the narratives which were written down from people who had once been enslaved in the 1930s, written down by authors as part of this big project. And he said, you're going to put us in jail. Your back is your jail. You're already, enslaved. You're already basically incarcerated and taken out to made work every day and brought back in. So there's no putting people in jail. That's why they whip people. That was the only punishment. For a white guy, they'd put him in jail. That's a punishment there. But with black folks, that was no punishment, incarcerating you. But the punishment was corporal punishment. So these people go back dispersed. I never could figure out. I got some first names, but you know how hard it is to get names before the first census after the Civil War was over. It's really hard to get full names, and I found a few first names, but I mainly didn't find any names or where they went back to. One of them purportedly, one of the guys was named Benjamin, and he was owned by the mayor of Weston, so he would have gone back to that mayor of Weston at the time. So they got John Doy and his son, and and the driver. They have a little preliminary hearing, kind of a kangaroo court in Weston, and what you call a preliminary hearing. Then you hold them, you bind them over for trial. If you've ever gone through the court system, when you're first arrested, and they take you in front of a judge and present their probable cause, and then the judge says, no, there's not enough probable cause. Release them till you get more, or we're going to bind them over for trial. So they bind them over for trial, but they let the driver go. They say, well, he was just working for John Doy. He's the ringleader here. We're going to take him and his son down to Platte City. So John Charles Doy that's late fall, I believe. They spend the winter in an unheated iron cell down in Platte City. And it was a long winter, too. Nothing much happens other than they can look out of their jail cell, and he documents. He wrote a book, and I rewrote the book for my book that's out there. He documents looking out and seeing slaves brought in. Sometimes they'd be escaping people would be brought in and be held in the kind of communal area around his jail cell, and he'd talk to them. And one of them was kind of a local guy in Platte City who would come and go. He would escape, and some even turn himself back in sometimes. Then he'd escape again. Just one of those guys, It's really some interesting human stories that always make it seem a little more complicated than what you might think. It was not that simple. And that guy, Charlie something, he got back out and had a job somewhere, and then he'd come back in. He'd escape for a while, and then he'd come back in. Somebody'd catch him and bring him back. And so he talked about that, and then he'd also talk about some beatings he would see out in the wall, or out in the yard outside the jail, where a guy, his owner, would come, and the enslaved person would refuse to admit that was his owner. And the guy was just beating him unmercifully to make you admit that, you're mine, I own you, and he would not admit it. So it's a complicated legacy we have along this border for sure. After the winter, they're taken up to St. Joe to be held for trial. for theft, for actually larceny over $50, I guess you might call today, or 250, whatever a felony is now, for theft of property out of Missouri. Well, they can't really connect them to any real theft. I mean, they had them maybe possession of stolen property, because see, slaves were property, and slave persons were not people; they were property. And this is after the time when they had the famous Drew Scott case, and one of our Supreme Court justices says a black man has no rights that a white man is obliged to respect. They were property, and so they started the trial. For some reason, in Lawrence, they were really following this closely. It was in the Lawrence papers all the time. They took up a collection. They helped hire a lawyer, and the lawyer got the son dismissed out of the case, but they were going to hold the father. So he's found guilty. Well, in Lawrence, like I said, they're following this, and they're pretty well organized in Lawrence, and they get together, and I believe it was James Montgomery, and God, there's so many names in there. I should have written them down. But needless to say, John Stewart, God, I can't remember the right. Oh, yeah, the names aren't important. Right, buy my book if you want to know the names. The guy right in the middle, I believe that was James Montgomery, or the other one. He was kind of the leader. He was like the local charismatic leader, and gets these guys together, and they say, okay, we're going to break him out. They've given him 5 years on one count. What if they come back and file the other 12 counts of each individual slave? He could get 5 years on each. So we've got to get him out. We've got to break him out. So again, they put together this posse. They ride up to Wathena, stay overnight in Wathena, go across the river to get a couple of boats, rowboats, go across the river to St. Joe. Have left their horses there because they got to ride back down to Lawrence. Roll over to St. Joe in the afternoon. A couple of them go into town. One of them, this younger kid that's with them, he gets into the jail under the ruse that he's bringing a message from John Doy's wife, and he gets into the jail, and he slips him the note and says, "Be ready at midnight." So Doy says, "Oh, man, I'm out of here. I'm not going." At the time, the prison was in Jefferson City. I'm not going to Jefferson City. So they go back, and he tells them, he said, that jail is like a fortress. And several of the guys, they want to just ride on it, shooting, and not ride on, but rush it, shooting and try to storm it. And he said, you cannot storm that jail. There's no way. They'll just stand behind their barred windows and kill us, and it'll alert the entire community, and there's no way we're going to get out of here. So they come up with a plan. They take one of their guys, and they tie his hands behind his back, or make it look like his hands behind his back, and two of the other guys, and they go up to jail late at night, and they pound on the door, and the jailer comes, and he says, "Yeah, I'm Sheriff so-and-so from Nottoway County or some other county," and said, "We got this horse rustler. We want to lodge him in your jail overnight." And at first, the jailer doesn't want to do it, and they finally talk him into doing it. Well, as soon as he opens the door, they put the guns on the jailer and hold him. And it was just back in those days, like you would have a jailer and his wife, and they would live in a apartment up above the jail or behind the jail, and they would cook, and she would cook for the jailers, and that's how they made their money. The county would pay them so much for each jailer, and pay them so much for the food, for each prisoner, and pay them so much for cooking the food for the prisoners. And so they grabbed him and held him, got John Doy out. All the other guys were going, "Let us out, let us go too," and they wouldn't take him. So they locked the jailer up in the cell, and they leave, and some of their guys are waiting down by the river by the boats, and most of them are up there around the jail, and they kind of get together. Well, at the same time, there's a theater that's just let out. And so they just mix in with this theater crowd, and they're supporting. John Doy is so weak because they haven't been feeding him very well and no exercise, just sitting in a cell for the last year, that they're holding him up as they walk down through, and they toward the river, and they get in with the crowd. Was it the theater? Might have been the Ruby Doo, but there's Ruby Doo Hotel too up there. Anyhow, they holding him up and get down to the river. They get down the river. There's a night watchman walking along there, and they thought they were getting ready to shoot him, and he holds up a lantern, and they said, "Oh, we're just down here looking for a lost boat." And he said, "Oh, okay," and they go on and get in their boats, and they row back across the river over by Wathena and get their horses and ride victorious back into Lawrence, and that's when that picture was taken. When they got to Lawrence, there was a local photographer who they sat him down and lined up, because everybody in Lawrence was out hooping and hollering, won this great victory over the Missourians, really. And it would have been cool, wouldn't it, be part of that? And ride back into town, and that's the picture was taken. John Doy will go on to write a book and go on a speaking tour. So he really had the whole hero's journey, didn't he? He got to go into danger and risk his life and help people, and he was pretty proud of himself when he got started. And then they lock him up for almost a year in horrible circumstances, and then they get him out of jail, and then he's able to go back out and tell his story of what happened to him. So that's kind of the story. That's the story of John Doy. Missourians are mad. They want to come and do something, but it's Lawrence is a bridge too far by now. Later on, Quantrell will ride over to Lawrence and do something, but Lawrence, for any kind of, unless you're just real criminals like Quantrell was, it was a bridge too far. It was too organized, and there was too many people. Nobody really wanted to go in and have that fight, so they really backed off of that and let that go. Well, at the same time, John Brown, who's been funded by the Secret Six, these are like the six richest men practically in the United States. It would be like being financed by Bill Gates. I'd say Elon Musk, but he wouldn't finance it, but Bill Gates and some people like that in his quest. And he has come to Kansas, and there's several stories about John Brown and having battles and stuff down in Kansas. But he also, they say it was almost like a staging ground, a practice for Harper's Ferry. But he has his small little group of guys, Kagi, John Kagi, and 4 or 5 others. And they ride over into Missouri down by Nevada and Butler, down in that area, and they raid several Missouri farms. They take stock and valuables and all the slaves, come back to Missouri. One of them is pregnant. A woman named Jane is pregnant. Come back up into Missouri, come back around Osawatomie and on south of Lawrence. They hide out there because this woman, Jane, she has a baby. They name this baby John Brown. And then they get on up to Lawrence. At the same time, John Doy is getting ready to go north. John Doy goes straight north through Oskaloosa out of Lawrence. John Brown says, I'm hot. After doing these raids on these Missouri farms, I'm hot. They're after me. I'm going to go farther west and then go north. So John Brown goes to Topeka out of Lawrence. The same time, John Doy goes straight north. Oh, we don't get there yet. John Brown and his group get to Topeka. They start angling back northeast toward where Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa, and Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa, and Missouri all kind of come together up there in the corner, up by Nebraska City, because that's where they're headed for, is Nebraska City. Kagi has a relative that has a cabin and a safe spot for them, several safe spots. That's another underground railroad route out of Topeka that spots are already set up. Farmers are already set up along the way, same as out of Lawrence. So they're headed north. They get about halfway up, and this militia out of Missouri is back prowling around, and they catch them. and they end up, they have what they call the Battle of the Spurs. Well, see, John Doy, he wasn't really well prepared with a group of men who were ready to fight. John Brown had a group of men who were ready to fight. And they send back down to, when they run into this Missouri posse, somebody goes back down to Topeka and gets a bunch more guys out of Topeka, and they come north to where John Brown is, and they end up confronting the Missourians, and they have a big battle, what they call the Battle of the Spurs. And they called the Battle of the Spurs because the only real shots that were fired or the only real thing that happened is Missourians put their spurs to their horses and ran off. And that was even reported in the New York Times at the time about this Battle of the Spurs. John Brown was, as you can tell, and you've seen the famous image in Kansas. He was a wild man. He was a wild man, and he was willing to die for what he believed in, and he was right in front of those guys riding on those Missourians, gun in each hand, they said when they reported it. So they go on north. They have a stopover up in Nebraska at Kagi's relatives. There's John Brown's cabin up there now today. It's a tourist at Nebraska City. They say it's John Brown's cave, and they hid in there. None of that's true, but they did stay in that cabin and get some food, and then head on up to Tabor, Iowa is the next one. If you ever want to do this kind of trip, it's a cool trip. Go up through Kansas and go up to Nebraska City and then to Tabor, Iowa. There's markings along the way. Tabor, Iowa, and then they got to just outside of Chicago, Dundee, Illinois, which is really a suburb of Chicago. They meet with oh God! All of a sudden, I've lost his name. Not Pendleton. Who's a famous detective in the Civil War and era after Pinkerton. Alan Pinkerton. Met with Alan Pinkerton. Thank you. Met with Alan Pinkerton, who was involved in the abolitionist movement, the Underground Railroad. He helps them get around Chicago to Detroit and takes these people, who John Brown and the new baby, and deposits them across the river into Canada. And there's actually online, there's a lot of information about that anymore. And I wrote my second book was about that story there, John Brown and the Last Train. So there's a lot going on, and those are just a couple of the stories of the Underground Railroad here along the western frontier. Anybody got any questions?
Wait, 1 second.
What years?
Wait, are we ready for questions?
Sure.
Okay. So I'll pass the mic around for people to ask questions. Just ask that you form your question as a question. Okay, we'll start with who was Daryl?
I just hadn't heard any years to any of the stories.
Yeah, I hesitate to say. It's like 1850 was the Missouri Compromise, but this really starts and during the border wars, 1855, 56, 50. I think it was 1857 was the exact year when this happened. That was before the Civil War, of course.
Next.
Kangaroo court. What do you mean by kangaroo court?
Kangaroo court? Well, that's kind of a slang term that we mean when we say it's kangaroo court, we say it's rigged against you. If you go to a kangaroo court, man, that was a kangaroo court. I don't know if anybody else heard that slang term. I used it all my life, but anyhow. So, go ahead, that man.
Yeah, I keep going back to the Fugitive Slave Act. Do you know if there were any examples of a freed person who was kidnapped and then was able to mount a successful legal defense?
Yeah, there is a good one. Although, God, no, it wasn't a legal defense because he was not actually free. There is that one, that 12 years a slave. I think that's that story, but I don't know. There's one, a pretty well-known one, and it also mirrors the ICE thing that's going on today. In Boston, there's a person who has escaped, gone up, really established a life for him for several years in Boston. And slave patrollers, slave catchers, whatever you want to call them, they get him, and they're trying to bring him back. And the neighbors all around this guy see this, and they're trying to break him loose. And And of course, whatever the law enforcement was at the time, they come and settle things down. They go ahead and put the man in jail to have some kind of adjudication. So there were courts at the time that would hear this. They were paid. They would present evidence if and the judge was paid on his decision. He was paid $5 if the person was found to be free. He was paid $10 if the person was found to be a slave. And their reasoning for the more money if he found the person a slave was because there's more paperwork involved in that. I don't know. I'll leave it up to you. Maybe it's because they really want people to be found a slave and give him incentive. But anyhow, this man in Boston, so he has one of these trials in front of this special judges that were appointed. They're federal judges appointed just to do this. And he's found a slave, and they still try to prevent him from taking him to a ship, and finally they get him through to a ship and back south. People in Boston then go to the south and get up enough money and buy his freedom and bring him back to Boston.
On your beginning of your show, you showed us a place that you said there were ruins, and what was that place, and where is it? Quinera or something?
Quindaro.
Where is that?
Quindaro. It's let me tell you. It's really hard to find. It's in Kansas City, Kansas. It's about 27th. It's just west of 635. Just before it crosses the Missouri River. See, Quindaro was a river town. So just before 635 crosses the Missouri River, you look straight west, and that's where you want to be. Now, you can't just exit there and go there. It's really hard to find. I'd say recommend you get a Google Maps and put in Quindaro, town of Quindaro. There'll be some marking. Don't put just Quindaro Boulevard, because it goes all along up there. But you get over into there, and it's a site that has a gazebo and markings and a statue of John Brown in it. It's got a cool place to visit.
It's right across from the Morton Amphitheater, on off of 635 in the Missouri River. I don't know if you've heard of the new amphitheater. It's just, it's right across the river.
It's south of the river from the Morton Amphitheater.
Yeah, Morton's south, and then Quindaro's north. But it's a little hard to find. Takes some effort, but it is cool. I'll vouch for that. Okay, that's all the time we have for questions. I think Gary has a table in the lobby if you want to buy a book or ask more questions.
And I haven't any more questions, but I have an announcement. I have a brand new podcast. I have this Mafia podcast, which kind of a smaller section of people like. Primarily men like stuff about organized crime. Women like stories about serial killers and murders and things like that isn't organized. I had a podcast expert, a consultant, say men like organized violence, women like disorganized violence. I don't know. I'll have to leave that up to you gals. But I just started. The first one drops today. The first 2 episodes are an interview of the sergeant that handled the Bob Burdella investigation, and the next 2 are going to be the guys that worked the Richard Grissom. If you're old enough, you might remember that. And we're going to continue on with 1 a week. So it's on your favorite podcast app. And I got books and movies out there. Any other questions, though? Okay, yeah, I'll be out there in the lobby.
Okay. Thanks, Gary. Okay, in just a moment, I'll be passing the volunteer task cards baskets. Please grab a task card that you can accomplish today after a meeting concludes. And once you've finished that task, you can return the note card to the done purple box in the lobby near the drink station. All the cleaning supplies you need are in the white cabinet in the foyer, right by the lemonade. We need everyone to help keep this place looking great. Go ahead and pass this around. Please join us for lunch to continue the conversation at the Martin City Brewery in the South Plaza. Next week, our featured speaker will be Joseph Germain on Unmentionable Histories, looking at the past queerly. Our musical guest will be Ramona Clay, and the community moment will be from Lindsay Doolittle. While our musician is coming back to the stage, we'd like to thank all those who are monthly donors that help keep KC Oasis running. KC Oasis is a 501c3 nonprofit run solely on donations and volunteers. If you like the topics and the music today, please consider donating through kcoasis.org, donate, or by Venmo. Our Venmo information can be found at the merch table in the lobby, as well as cash donation jars. Recurring monthly donations through our website are most helpful. Here's Izzy to play one last song for us. As a reminder, we have a cash tip jar and Venmo to support her music.
Okay, thank you guys so much again for having me. I saved my most fun one for the end. So basically I just wrote this song when I was sitting in my room, I was sitting on my bed, I was looking around at the mess that was everywhere, I had clothes all over the floor, I was overwhelmed with everything in life, and I was just like, man, I wish the clothes would just pick themselves up and float to the closet. And so that's where the song came from. I stare at the same piece of clothing on my floor, pretend it picks itself up and returns back to the closet where I know it belongs. If I've known this all along, why can't I force my limbs to move that direction? Pathetic. I'm writing a song for the ones who don't know anything about what's going on. I don't have any answers. Playful banter. It's just about all I have to offer. I dream of you and the way you like to move in the nighttime, daytime, evening. I don't mind. I wish for the day you would look to me and say you are the one. Wouldn't we have so much fun? Please leave me alone. I don't think I like your tone. Take that mean little face and walk back out the door you came in. I'm okay. Really, I'm okay. Not gonna think about this simple interaction for a week. Work myself up into a frenzy. Chronically overthink every little mannerism that they possibly could misconstrue as rude. I wish I slept for more than 2 hours a night. I wish my pants wouldn't fit me so tight. I wish my mother knew that I was trying. I wish the doctors knew if I was dying. But I won't go 'cause I'm afraid to find out. The pen is etched into my brain somehow. I think that it's become a part of my skin. I'll toss and turn and cry but won't let you in. Won't let you in. Not gonna think about this simple interaction for a week. Work myself up into a frenzy. Chronically overthink every little mannerism that they possibly easily could misconstrue as rude. Oh, I'll be okay. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your music, Izzy. Lovely. Okay, before you head out, take a few minutes to help clean up. We again thank this week's presenter, Gary Jenkins, and our musician, Izzy Heller. And thank you for being here or tuning in online. We'll see you next week.